Now, the last evaluation criterion that we'll discuss is sharing. Sharing metadata and metadata records, which breaks down into a couple of questions. First of all, is your metadata shared at all? In other words, is your metadata harvestable? Which probably means that you're adhering to some standardized specification like OAI PMH, or if you're in the library world, Z3950. So your metadata records are exposed, which means they're on the open web and you've published the URI of your repository, etc. And that, of course, implies that your metadata records are separate objects from the resources that they describe. If your metadata is embedded in the resource, we're in a situation more like schema.org, where the resource itself has to be accessible. So in that situation, are your resources on the open web? Are they accessible by web crawlers, such as search engine bots? Are your resources on the open web also means, are they not behind a paywall? Do they not require a login to get access to them? Is there no robots.txt file excluding crawlers? Now, I don't want to get into how robots.txt files work, but suffice it to say that there is such a thing as what's called the robots exclusion protocol, which allows you to specify individual files or even entire directories on your website and disallow web crawlers, which are of course also called robots, from crawling those files and directories. And the idea is to keep those out of search engines and the like, or that's the idea anyway. The point is, are the resources with metadata embedded in them, are those on the open web and freely accessible for any bot or crawler to get access to? Even if your resources and your metadata records are on the open web and harvestable, they don't do anyone much good if they're in your own unique and idiosyncratic format, at least not without a crosswalk. So if I can harvest your metadata, but I can't do anything with it, then really what's the point? So are you using open standards? Are you adhering to OAI PMH specifications for allowing your metadata to be harvested? Are you using schema.org or microformats or microdata or other established semantic markup schemas? Are you using established controlled vocabularies and encoding schemes like Art and Architecture Thesaurus or ISO 8601? Or, if you really must develop your own unique schema, have you at least published a crosswalk to other established schemas? Are you using entities declared in DBpedia or any of the other linked open data projects that publish their ontologies? First of all, are you sharing your metadata at all? And then, second, what standards are you using to accomplish that sharing? But then, third, you have to ask, how easy have you made it for others to get access to your metadata? So remember this diagram of how OAI PMH works, right? A harvester requests a metadata record or records from a data provider, and the repository, the data provider sends back metadata records, which are then aggregated into a repository. Well, that's the simplest possible situation. More likely, the data provider has implemented something called flow control, which controls how much data is being sent downstream for any given request, so as not to take up too much bandwidth. And this diagram shows how that works. A harvester might request all new records, but the data provider says, here's how many new records there are, but I'm throttling your request and I'm only giving you some smaller number of records at a time. So the downside is that the harvester has to make more than one request to get all new records if there are a lot of them. If there's only 3, then it's no big deal, but if there are hundreds, then it might be. The downside is the harvester has to make multiple requests. The upside is that each batch of records that are sent won't monopolize all of the available bandwidth on either side and choke the servers. If you've ever worked with APIs, which stands for Application Programming Interfaces, you'll know that APIs often throttle requests for data. You can only issue so many requests per hour, for example, or the API will only give you so many records back per request. Anyway, the point is that sharing is hard. Just ask any 3-year-old. Sharing is hard. Sharing can be made easier, though, or more difficult, depending on how you choose to implement the way you share.